over 50% of children, over half of children, believe that humanity is doomed. And not just that, but they are holding adults and governments responsible.
Welcome to The Switch, not another podcast. The Switch is a collaboration between Baseload Capital and DNB, aiming to accelerate the green transition. We want our podcast to be a central hub for knowledge exchange within the fields of renewables and green transition. Hosted by Kristina Hagström-Ilevska and produced by Emil and Jacob.
We have a super exciting guest here with us today, and I'm super excited about talking to her about why we actually need these kind of organizations. I mean, isn't it obvious, Emil? Isn't it obvious why we?
Yeah. I think it's kind of difficult to understand why we need to have these conversations in the first place.
In my mind, I think that we've been talking about this for so long, and still then people are not educated enough. I'm actually very intrigued in listening to hearing what actually climate anxiety is. So let's not wait further ado. It's time to make sure to welcome our guest.
She is the co-founder of Our Kids Climate and the author of the book Talk to Children About Climate, and the head of operation at Våra, klimat, a Swedish network with over 26,000 parents mobilizing together for a stronger climate action. She has a strong passion to spread the word about the role parents have to take to protect our children from the threats posed by rapidly changed climate. In this episode, you will find out about her journey, what conversations we need to have, and how we should get more people to do the switch. Let's give a warm switch welcome to Frida Berry Eklund.
Frida, welcome to The Switch, not another podcast.
Thank you.
We are so stoked about having you here because you are an amazing person that together with your colleagues have created a network of 58 parent groups from 23 countries who are uniting for the climate action, but especially for kids. Can you please tell us a bit more about this? Because this is something really huge.
Yeah, and I don't think many people know that we actually started it, that it started here in Sweden. So we kind of describe this platform as the Fridays for Future movement's ParentArm, if you like, and there are actually two kind of sister
Greta's
networks.
moms and dads.
Yeah, it's Greta's moms and dads.
Oh, wow.
Pretty much,
yeah.
Although we have been around mobilizing for longer.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a very broad network
You're
of
older
groups.
than Greta.
We're a lot older. Yeah, so what we're trying to do is gather like groups that particularly engage parents, grandparents, the kind of intergenerational aspect of climate change, if you like, to really mobilize and help each other do more and build the movement so that more parents can get involved in this issue that's obviously affecting all of our children right now, but also into the future.
But listen, honestly, how come even parents need this? I mean, the information is everywhere. We have a problem. Why do we need an organization for parents to understand more about the climate?
I'm a little bit obsessed with like engaging parents in particular, because I think a lot of people haven't actually realized that this is going to affect our children.
Do you mean that? Do you think that they didn't understand it yet?
I think you understand it in a very theoretical level. Perhaps that there is a problem, but actually it will probably be okay. Here in Sweden, a very kind of developed country, we're probably not going to be affected that much. But so I think we're really aware of the problem, but I don't think the actual insight into how deep this problem goes and how crucial it is that we act now is. And I think that's what we're trying to do with this coalition, really bring this issue as part of also being a parent. Like we do this every day. We put seatbelts on our kids, we put bicycle helmets on them, we try to protect them in every way they can, we try to, help them live good lives in the future. But this is an issue that's actually going to affect our children. And we know that no matter what we do today, there are going to be big changes coming their way. Everywhere. No one is going to be left untouched.
But does that mean that people are not educated enough? Do we have an uneducated population?
Are you speaking about Sweden or internationally?
Oh, let's take the comparison. In Sweden, are we educated?
We are. I think it's one of the countries where we have the highest awareness of the issue in the world. It's close to 95%. A very small part of the population actually don't believe that it's happening.
But so there is still a part. There's 5% actually in Sweden that think that this is not real.
Between depending how you count, between maybe 2 and 5%. I'm not so worried about that. But what I'm more concerned with are the 95% that are aware that this is happening, but it still hasn't translated into engagement, into action. We still haven't really cracked that, I think. The crisis insight, I think, isn't quite there yet.
What would you like them to do? What is your vision and what do you want to achieve by creating this platform?
I think for parents that are curious or worried to feel that they have the power to do something, to mobilize with others, to find groups or organizations that they can connect to make a bigger impact. So we're really trying to lift this issue from the shoulders of the individual. Like this, you should recycle more at home and you should, take care of your plastic, but really lift it to a different level. It's a global problem. It's a systemic problem. We need to completely rebuild our societies. And how can we as a parent voice do that work? And I think parents are a really interesting target group in this because we make consumer decisions at home for the family. We are very connected into our local communities, in our sports clubs and into other local businesses and so forth. And we also have some sort of power in society. We're old enough to have big networks, to have maybe, we have work that we can influence and so forth. So I think also, and more than that, I think we're a really important electoral group that politicians look to for clues. So why I'm obsessed with parents is that if we can build not just the awareness, but the pressure from that target group, I think that will really help put pressure on politicians.
So translating it means that if we push the parents and educate them in a sense, they will vote with their mindset to greener society or better climate. Is that what you're aiming for?
Not just voting. I think that's a really important part of it, but also like using our power. So whether we're a CEO or we're on the factory floor or we're a teacher, no matter where we are in society, in our jobs as in the workplace, I think that's a really important place where we can make a difference. So I'm really looking for that next ring of influence, if you like, outside the home. That's important too. But I think at this moment in time, we need everyone to take that next step. What sport clubs can I influence? What happens in my workplace? How can I play a role there? I think we talked about that before. It's like, how can we find our superpower and how can we use that?
Can you give an example of a person or or organization or something that actually has made that impact, that has changed something?
I mean, Greta would be the obvious example, right? I mean, if someone said this 3 years ago, like, why don't we put a child outside of government and that's going to spark a global movement and really shift the debate? I mean, that would never have happened.
How big of impact do you think actually Greta had? When it comes to this?
Huge, and a lot more internationally than in Sweden.
So then back to the question. We in Sweden, 95%, you said. What about the rest of the world? Are they educated enough in this question?
No, it's the short answer. I mean, I've worked on climate change since 2008. And I mean, it's been a huge, huge difference in terms of actually seeing this issue coming to life in the media. And you hear, the scientists have been talking about this for ages. The politicians in power have been talking about this issue for ages. But also been a huge delay mechanism in place, obviously, particularly funded by a lot of the fossil fuel companies that are delaying progress. Same ways happened with the tobacco industry back in the day. And I think we need to look at it that way.
But the tobacco succeeded in a sense. Or?
They succeeded in delaying action for many
we
years.
succeeded. We won over the tobacco in some sense, or?
Yeah, in some sense.
So there is hope for us as well.
It is definitely hope, of course.
Yeah, good. Listen, I actually want to bring up you wrote a book, Talk with Your Kids About the Climate. And what made you actually write this book? Do you think that there is not enough information out there? I mean, it's a Google away.
I think there's enough information for adults to find the information about climate, but I think I know a lot about this topic and I find it really difficult to figure out how much of the truth can I tell to my children, 6 and 9 years old, without scaring the Jesus out of them, to be honest? And how can I, as a parent, protect them, because that's what we want to do, from a lot of the information, but how can I also give them the tools and the competences that they are going to need in the future? And I wanted to kind of dig into that and see what does the research say, what does science say about how we best have these conversations. I'm a specialist in climate communications for adults. So how can I translate that into how we need to talk to our children about this? Because obviously our children are thinking about this issue a lot.
Yeah, I know you have some interesting numbers about these. Tell me about them. Children are thinking how much about these kind of things?
Well, there was a recent study published very recently where you looked at, it's a Lancet study on climate anxiety in children. They looked at 10,000 children across 10 countries. Over 50% of children, over half of children believe that humanity is doomed. And not just that, but they are holding adults and governments responsible. So children are learning and understanding about this issue, and they see that adults are not doing enough to protect them. So I think that was really heartbreaking. I mean, not just that, I mean, the study also shows how climate anxiety and climate-related emotions in children are there all the time under the surface. They think about it a lot.
But, I mean, if I were a doubter, if I was a mean person, I would say, like, what is climate anxiety? I mean, people have anxiety about like what they're going to wear tomorrow. People have anxiety about what car they will be driving, or if they're going to have success at work. And what would you say? What is climate anxiety?
I'll tell you what it's not. It's not a disease. It's not something that we want to cure, basically. I mean, climate anxiety is a short term, a buzzword, if you like, for a lot of climate-related emotions. And that can be everything from sadness to grief to anger to frustration but also anxiety. I mean, anxiety is something that it's a physical thing that happens to our bodies when, say that we're really scared of elevators. We get, the pulse is increasing, you feel like you're under threat. And that is real for a lot of children. There are a lot of young people that are feeling that's anxiety, but also other climate-related emotions.
Let me show you a clip. I was quite amazed, actually. I when reading up on everything you've done, I asked my son. I'm going to show you. We're going to show you on the clip here. Take a look here.
Sandy, vet du vad klimat är för någonting?
Nej.
Vet du vad miljö är för någonting?
Ja.
Vad är det då?
Det är skogen. Var snäll mot skogen och allt. Det andra.
Har du hört någonting om hur jorden mår just nu?
Dåligt.
Gör den det? Vad är det för knasigt med den då?
Det är många som skräpar.
Är det? Vad ska man göra åt det då?
Städa.
Well, at least he has a solution to
Good
it,
point.
in a sense.
Yeah.
I asked my son in this clip, how is the earth doing? And he said, bad. I mean, isn't it amazing that this little 6-year-old understands that earth is not doing good? Aren't we scaring them too much in that sense? Will it help him to have more knowledge about it? Are we as parents not giving him the right information, or what are your thoughts on this?
I think exactly what you're onto there is like children know about it anyway. So if we leave them without talking to them in a constructive way about it, we're leaving them with sometimes in 6-year-olds a lot worse thoughts in their minds. They got really vivid imagination about what's going on. So what I've kind of explained in the book is like we need to talk to them in an age-appropriate way, and there are really good ways of how we can do that. And we need to normalize those conversations. It's the same as any other really difficult topic. I mean, we do children a real disservice by not talking about it. But more than that, I think we just need to, as adults, kind of normalize showing that we care about this issue too, that we're acting, we're doing what we can in our everyday lives to kind of, make an impact and contribute to the solutions. But it is true. I mean, it's 6-year-olds, it's 7-year-olds, it's 8-year-olds. They know something's up, obviously. There are lots of signals around us, and not least, I mean, social media, when you and I were growing up, maybe it wasn't everywhere, you had the daily newspaper, but today there's no way of avoiding it. It's everywhere in society. So of course it trickles down to the children. So we need to be there, as adults, we need to be there with them. We need to hold their hand, we need to explain what's going on, and we need to show that we care as well.
Interesting. It also frustrates me quite a lot. I mean, going around, do we have enough tools to really make a difference? Going around feeling anxiety won't help us out of this situation as we are now. I mean, that's why I adore Greta. She's just standing there. She's actually doing something. What would be your advice? Like, okay, so we have to move the front line. What should we actually do?
Well, if we look at children first and mental health and how they're feeling about this issue and the anxiety, one key thing is having the opportunity to talk about it. Another thing is finding ways to get involved in collective action. So this is something that we talk a lot about. Like, do we put more pressure on kids to do that recycling or to feel like they have to eat less meat? Or can we just involve them in, litter cleanups? Or can we involve them in like other green organizations, or just connect them to different things that they care about already? Because they do care already. They care about the planet, they care about the animals. Even really young children are, planet stewards. So I think that's one thing. We need to be with them, and we need to kind of help them maybe find those collective places that they feel that they're part of something. And the family can be that too. Like, as a family, we can act as a collective. We are a family that care about this, and we will act.
If we move on to the adults, because I think the kids, as you said, they don't have the possibility to affect that much. What is the adult world missing? What do we need to do to make the switch? I kind of always describe it as like the holy triangle that needs to happen at the same time. So you need to have, a political situation that is progressive and helpful and make the decisions that are needed on a systemic level. We're talking about legislation. We're talking about, all sorts of different policies that need to happen at the political level. Then we also need progressive companies. That's crucial. And today, I think what we're seeing, particularly in the Swedish context, is that a lot of companies are actually leading the way, and they're asking politicians to set more long-term goals and rules for the game, so they can actually make those investments and start planning and get the capital into the solutions space. And then there's the public. And that's kind of where I'm working. It's like, how can we build public pressure? So that's not so much about. It is about education, it's about knowledge, but it's also about understanding that we do need to take another step now. We need to create more public pressure. We need to put pressure on the politicians. Because today, to be honest, I think politics are lagging behind. I normally describe it as like publics are kind of the wind in the sails of the politicians. We are the ones that give them, and we need to show and signal that we are ready for change. If we don't signal that we are ready for change as a collective, then politicians are they're not going to plow the way. It's because they want to be re-elected.
They want to be re-elected, and also they think 4 years, right? 4 years in advance. That's the limit. Whereas as parents, we need to think about the next generation, and probably the next generation after that, maybe even 7 generations ahead. So I think that's the parental perspective that we're trying to bring. Is we're not doing this because it's fun. I'd rather do other stuff with my time that are more fun, but we have to do this. It's like a calling, and I think the people that I'm working with in the climate parent movement are the same. This is something that we have to do because it's part of our parental responsibility, if you like. We have to use that parent power that we have within us to also affect this kind of change to create that world for our kids.
Frida, you are a warrior and you have a lot of strength behind you. You can tell that by your energy and everything, but there are so many people out there that are not the same type of warriors as you are. What would be your advice to them?
I think just to find your superhero cape somewhere. And it doesn't really matter what it is. Like, what are you good at? What spheres of influence are you in? And like I said, that could be your local community. That can be your workplace. That can be all sorts of different, where can you spread those rings of influence, if you like. I think it's so important. And then there are parents like us, like we call us the barricade moms normally. It's the mums, to be honest, that do a lot of this work, that are on the barricades, that are pushing, and that trying to get meetings with politicians, and to try to bring the kids' voice and their perspectives into the room.
That's a very interesting point. That would be the next show. Emil, put that down. I want to discuss this.
Yeah.
Why are women always in the front
Yeah.
when it comes to these kind of questions? It's super interesting topic.
Yeah, it is. And
Bring
I mean,
me
the
back with
movement
it.
is very much mothers.
Yeah.
It's a mother's movement. I would say on the global level, probably over 90% of the organizers that we see and the groups that spark up in the world, led by moms on the side of day jobs and looking after families.
Dads, we need you. Come on, join us. Correct?
Yeah, we need the dads.
We need the dads, yeah. I need something else from you. This is a challenge. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okie dokie. So I'm going to give you 3 choices of questions. So I'm going to go personal now. You're going to be able to ask me one of these questions, and you're going to be able to pick one of these questions. So let's see how your conscience is when it actually comes down to the climate thing. So.
Now it's time for conscious questions.
Frida, are you ready?
I'm ready.
So I would like to know, 1, tell us what you have done for the climate this week that is good. Or maybe 2, have you seen something really stupid done to the climate this week? Or number 3, do you have a guilty pleasure when it comes to the climate?
So I'm going to pick one.
Yeah, you get to
I mean,
pick
I
one.
work with climate all the time, so my week is just climate, so that's not fun. So guilty pleasure then.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Keeping up with the Kardashians.
Well, that's not environmentally.
Well, it is,
Maybe
right?
it is.
Because
I don't know.
because the climate impact of streaming services worldwide is huge. It is
think
absolutely huge.
I think you're onto something here. If we would get like some really nice and big influencers to drive this. I mean, Kardashian is a mom. She should be joining. Kourtney Kardashian, come join our kids' climate now. We need you.
Do I get to pick one for you
Yeah.
now? Well, I think maybe, was it something crappy that's happened this week on climate or something?
Yeah, something bad I've
stupid,
seen
or-
in the climate issue this week. Yeah, I saw this article, which was really interesting. It says that young people are not feeling good about the climate, but it says that only 25% of the people, adult people, have climate on the agenda. I think that is devastating. Big people out there who has a mandate, who has power, who has the possibility to really act. Only 25% of you have it on your agenda. Come on. That must be corporate bullshit not to have it.
That's
Bullshit.
yeah.
Good. Thank you about that.
Now it's time for the disruptive questions. It seems like the world keeps changing at an ever-increasing pace. What advice do you have for leaders trying to contend with this new reality?
I would say connect with the science. I think I've been working on this issue for a long time, right? We've known about the science. Now I think science is starting to trickle out there. And there's a lot of different sources to actually access. You know, science is normally like really difficult to understand. Climate science is like almost impossible to understand. It's so complex. It's like planetary boundaries, etc. But I think now we're in a place where everyone needs to connect with that science, like actually really look at those graphs and what they are telling us. And then I think need to also dig down and actually, what does that make us feel? We need to connect with our emotions. We're not going to act on this issue. We're not going to make the changes needed unless we find those emotions. And they can be anger, they can be frustration or despair,
Hope.
even, or hope, or active hope. Whatever it is, we need to connect with our emotions. Otherwise, we're not going to get anything done. So read up, connect with the science, find your emotions, name them, figure out what they are, and then use them to do something.
I read a super interesting study that they did on where they were checking out how you communicate from the science world and in the news world, and it showed that the science, they're using positive words like affirmations that things are moving forward. Even if they would say that something is really bad, they would say it in a good way. In that case, the news, they do the opposite. The world is going down, it's a disaster, and so on. It was quite interesting, and I couldn't stop thinking about, is that why science doesn't reach us? Because it's too much on the hope side. Do we as people not react when it comes to hope and possibilities? Do we move more towards the fear and the stress and the disasters?
That's the age-old question, isn't it? I mean, I think, science plays a role, and what I've seen in the last decade is that they've been so careful with wording everything with caveats and, this might happen, or this is a projection, this is not set in stone. And that has cushioned us from the real problem for a long time. Now what I'm seeing in the climate science community is that people are really stepping up. Like, we see scientists becoming barricade moms and dads. They are using a lot stronger language. We've seen this in the IPCC reports, the UN IPCC reports, where the language has been more. You can hear these scientists kind of screaming at us almost behind those words when you see how the language has changed over time. And of course, like media. The media logic functions that way. It's about clicks, of course. But that puts us, my specialism is climate communications, and sometimes people ask me, do we need more doom or do we need more positivity? And those are the wrong questions, because we are in a place where we do need both. We do need to understand the problem. We need to connect with the science and understand it, but we also need to find the hope in acting. We don't need naive hope that someone else is going to fix it, because that's a lot, I think, where we are now. But we really need to figure out that it's actually us. It's this generation. It's everyone is an adult today. It's the next couple of years where we need to see really big changes.
On that topic, I hear that you are on your way to something that you are very committed and engaged about. And we had Holly Ranson here a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about uncomfortable conversations that need to be had. What uncomfortable conversations are there out there that are not held at this moment? What would you say?
Everything from private conversations, I think, where a lot of us are stepping away from those conversations, maybe at the dinner table with family.
So
Christmas.
Starting to challenge the food waste, for example, or... It's
very difficult to have those conversations without creating guilt. And I think we've talked about that, like actually guilting people, and that's not a good motivator for change. We know that. But there are a lot of other uncomfortable, I think, conversations that need to happen. I mean...
Can you give an example of anyone?
I think the biggest gap is science and politics. So like forcing those conversations, I think, is key. Like forcing people now to understand the science and taking decisions that are science-based. But that is the problem with our political system in a lot of, because it functions within 4 years. It doesn't function to kind of safeguard, humanity for like generations to come. So within that frame, I think that people are trying to find different difficult conversations in that. But I think that's where a lot of the rub is, I think.
I agree with you. And I must also add to the fact that I hate it when my mom challenges me with the food waste and all the things I do at home. But I do believe that these kind of conversations or questions need to be there as well in our home environment. I think that uncomfortable conversations are very important to move ourselves forward.
It is, and I think if you're going to succeed with those conversations, it's not starting from a place of guilt and shaming. It's starting from a place of loving care and of understanding and also finding different ways in that person can connect to. Like you love snow, you love skiing. Maybe we can talk about snow and how that's affected, or there are ways into conversations that don't turn into guilt, because obviously like no one is innocent. We all have a role to play. Just stepping outside our door, we have a climate impact, right? And we know in Sweden our climate impact is bigger than most in this country.
True that. On that topic, I think you said something. I think there is also, even though we need to have uncomfortable conversations, we also need to praise the people that actually do something that is good for it. We usually have a question, do you have someone that you would like to give an additional extra sunshine this week? Who would you like to give some sunshine?
Sunshine!
I would like to give some sunshine to the mums in England that I work with. And they work through a different couple of groups, but they're called Mothers Rise Up. And Parents for Future UK, who are at the moment doing a spectacular job trying to get more parents to the Glasgow COP and really kind of speaking truth to power there within that context. And also, I mean, doing this work, a lot of unpaid work after hours with families and so forth to really bring forward the parent voice. So I think those mother warriors, if you like, I'd like to shine an extra spotlight on.
As you give sunshine to others, I would like to give sunshine to you, because you have a very important initiative that you actually started recently, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
You have a podcast out there, and I think that each and every one of you should listen. We will, of course, put the link out there so that get to know more about it. But tell us, what's the focus?
Well, it's called Våra klimat podden, so Our Kids' Climate podcast, if you like. So it's trying to really bring the climate to the parent world. So it's a parent podcast more than anything, but we talk about climate-related issues in a way that's hopefully a bit fun and gives you a little bit something that you can take with you and do something with, like a little bit of information and a lot of good conversations with quite spectacular guests as well.
Wow, we're looking forward to that. Cooperation, moving on. So in the end now, I really would like to summarize this conversation by asking all of you guys listening now to really stand your ground and also read up on how we can talk about these kind of issues with the children. But I think that we should do that not only to be able to talk to the children, but to put it on the agenda of the really powerful places where we can actually make a switch.
Agreed.
Thank you very much for joining us here in The Switch, and thank you for doing your work that is actually helping to contribute to the switch to a better planet in balance.
Thanks so much for inviting me.
It was an honor. Thank you.
Thank you.
As we learned and as we started this podcast, we for sure need organizations like this. It just dawned on me how uneducated we are as a world and how much more we need to make sure that we take in. And especially also making sure that we can deliver all of this knowledge to our younger generation, because we have a responsibility to make sure to not create climate anxiety, but to create motivation to change and to really make the switch. Thank you for looking and listening to us today. Make sure to subscribe. It would make me very happy if you just click.
And give us 5 stars.
And give us 5 stars so that more people can be part of The Switch, not another podcast series, and to help us make the switch. Thank you all our listeners, and thank you all our viewers on YouTube. See you later.